Let us now return to what has been arguably the single most important contribution India has made to the world. That system of numbers, which has been so crucial to every aspect of our modern numbers-based civilization. We earlier left the story of how, via the Islamic world, those single-digit Indian numbers, including the crucial idea of zero, discovered in India in the 6th and 7th centuries, finally reached Europe, and as late as 1200 were brought to Italy from Africa by Fibonacci. But they took some time to catch on in Europe, still stuck with those clumsy Roman numerals. It wasn't until the early 15th century when they started to get really taken up by some key figures in the Renaissance. In that hotbed of creativity, the Italian city of Florence and the surrounding countryside with its rich market towns. Florence had become rich as the centre of European banking, and it was this which made possible that explosion of genius which we associate with the painters, sculptors and architects like Masaccio, Brunelleschi and Alberti. These incredibly clever men, way ahead of anyone else in the world at that time, became preoccupied with working out the scientific laws of perspective, for which it was vital to have a much more efficient form of mathematics, the key to which, of course, was those new numbers, without which we would not have had some of the world's finest painting and buildings, such as Brunelleschi's Florence Cathedral. A bit later than them, another of the greatest Renaissance figures, Piero della Francesca, combined his passion for painting with his obsession for mathematics. The son of an indigo farmer, Piero had learnt Indian numerals at the abacus school from a young age. Obsessed with perspective and geometry, he eventually wrote 3 treatises, summarizing how the Indian style of numbers and calculation could be used in art as well as commerce. A friar named Luca Pacioli knew Piero and was familiar with his work. In fact, he is accused by Vasari of quite shamelessly publishing one of Piero's treatises under his own name. Pacioli's works went on to become some of the most influential books published in Europe at that time. This was because they introduced to a much wider audience some of the most practical, everyday uses of the new Indian numbers, such as the basic rules of how to keep accounts and how to use double-entry bookkeeping. So quickly did this sweep Europe from bankers to shopkeepers that to this day Pacioli is remembered as the father of accounting. But he hadn't lost touch entirely with the world of art. In the late 15th century, Pacioli moved to the city of Milan, where he lived with a painter by the name of Leonardo da Vinci. They started collaborating in about 1496. At the time, Pacioli was brimming with his passion for the potential of Indian numbers and what could be done with them. And Leonardo was finishing off one of his most famous works, The Last Supper, on the wall of a Milanese monastery, finally completed in 1498. Da Vinci went on to use Indian numerals frequently, as can be seen in his notebooks. In this picture of Luca Pacioli reading Euclid, no nod to India or Piero here, it's believed that Leonardo may have finished off the rhombicubooctahedron in the top left. The figure on the top right is supposed to be Albrecht Dürer, who also learnt Indian math from Pacioli. One of Dürer's most famous works is his Melancholia I, which in the top right includes a 4x4 magic square using the Indian numerals. A similar one can be found carved on the Jain temple in Khajuraho in the centre of India, 500 years earlier. The Europeans were finally starting to catch up. From this point on, the rest is history. Those Indian numbers became the foundation, not just of modern bookkeeping, but of almost all the science and technology which the modern world is built from. And without the genius of zero, the earliest recording of which is found on the wall of a tiny Indian temple dating from the year 876 in Gwalior. Incidentally, that earliest use of zero on the inscription is to calculate the area of garden needed in order to grow sufficient marigolds to be able to garland the statue of Vishnu every day for a year.